Hello and welcome to NewsClick. Today we are joined by Prabir Purkayastha to discuss the recent announcement made by Iran that said that the country has now increased the amount of uranium, low enriched uranium possessed by the country has now surpassed the limits which was set in the Iran nuclear deal. So firstly, Prabir, if we look at the more nitty-gritties of the deal, the more details of this deal, is this really true? Because what is being shown in the mainstream media right now is that Iran has violated the deal, but is this true?
Well, let's put it this way. Violation of a deal can take place if there is a deal. The JCPOA, the basic agreement we are talking about, basically was between the United States and Iran, and it had another 5 countries in it. Essentially P5 is on one side, including the United States, plus Germany. And then, of course, the other party was Iran. But all of this was really an agreement between the United States and Iran. And the other countries, the 5 countries, which is the 6 countries on one side, they were there to essentially guarantee that both sides behave, as it were. And they therefore also are a part of the agreement that in case anything happens, they will also have to take responsibilities. The United States has walked out of the agreement. Having walked out of the agreement, it says Iran must still be held to the agreement. Now, this means what we would call in conventional childhood playground style, head I win, tail you lose. So this seems to be the argument which is being given. The second part, to answer your question about what is the agreement, that agreement also provides that if one side reneges on a part of the agreement, and Iran made very clear that if the United States reneges on certain parts of the agreement, that these are the steps they'll be forced to take. So this is one part of it, that this is not in that sense a violation of agreement, because this is also built into the clauses of the agreement, what Iran would do if the US does something. Okay? The last part of this, and I think this is very, very important for us to understand, that the United States has sanctioned Iran from exporting enriched uranium and heavy water. Now, what they have been doing is, while they keep the centrifuges running, before they hit the 300 kg limit set by the JCPOA agreement, the Iran agreement, they would export these additional amounts and send it to Russia, and the heavy water I believe they were sending to Oman, where Oman was holding an inventory of heavy water. Now, after you have forbidden them to export, you have put that under sanctions, what is it that you are asking Iran to do? Essentially stopping its enrichment program. Iran from the beginning, in fact this is the bone of contention right through the Iran and US standoff, that we have a right under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty for pursuing the peaceful uses of nuclear energy, and therefore we have a right to enrich uranium for the purpose of various things, including setting up power reactors, but also for essentially what are called medical isotopes, various other uses of this kind of products of uranium. So all of this is a right that the Iran was exercising right from the beginning, and this right is what the United States wants to take away. US is very clear in what it is saying. It is saying that Iran must submit in toto, must give up any possibility of dealing with the enrichment of uranium. It must not deal with anything to do with nuclear, shall we say, technologies, which include a whole bunch of other things, not just, shall we say, power or bombs, but also a whole bunch of other things, including, as I said, medicinal use. Then it must not have any rocket technology, that it must not be able to have any missiles. And at the last point that it is making, these are statements both Trump and Pompeo have made, that they should not also interfere in the region, which means they should play no diplomatic role or a military role in the region. That means Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates and Israel, of course, will, with conjunction with the NATO powers, of course, United States being the key one, should be allowed a free hand in the region to destroy countries, Libya, Syria, Iraq being three of the examples, and Iran should not play any role resisting any of this. Essentially, it is an argument you disarm and then we'll let you live. Now, the question is, if you disarm, whether you will be allowed to live or you will be invaded and occupied, nobody knows. And effectively, at any point of time, Iran to be thrown at the mercies of Israel, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, under the aegis of the United States is not an option that Iran can exercise at any moment. So, this is therefore, to me, as I said, the childhood bully example comes to mind, that you have to surrender or else, and if you surrender, then of course I can beat you every day, morning and evening, and we know what Israel is doing in Gaza. Yeah. So they fire bombs, and if the Palestinians living there retaliate any form, even protest on the borders peacefully, they are shot and bombed. So this is the peace that Israel wants to impose on West Asia in large. This is the peace that Saudi Arabia at the moment is imposing on Yemen, unsuccessfully, hopefully. So this is the peace that United States, the NATO allies, and the, shall we say, Israel and its allies in the region want to impose on Iran. And this obviously is not acceptable to any country. Why should a country surrender after having already negotiated one peace, in which they gave up a lot? Yeah. 98% of the low enriched uranium, which they had as a stockpile, they exported out. Out of 16,000 centrifuges, they brought the number of centrifuges down to 5,000. Or I think 6,000, out of which 5,000 were operational. So they took huge hits to the nuclear enrichment program in order to have peace. And at that time we said, well, this is at least a possibility of peace. And after Trump walked out, we've been waiting to see how far the United States wants to take it to war.
Prabir, can you also talk more about the role of the other countries in the deal? You mentioned before that, of course, US is not the only country. There are 5 European countries as well, which are part of the deal. Have they really played their role properly in terms of, monitoring the behavior of the two countries and what the US is currently doing?
Yeah. Let's put it this way. There are 4 European countries plus China. So that makes it 5. And 3 of them are what would be called European Union countries. Not so Great Britain, United Kingdom, France, and Germany. These are the 3 European countries which are a part of the deal. Now, one of the things that was originally created, that sanctions mean that then Iran cannot do a whole bunch of things. So Trump's withdrawal meant sanction on Iran. Essentially sanctions on their oil export, which is one of their major exports. Once you start sanctioning oil, then obviously Iran is going to be hit in its economic activities because it can't import a whole lot of things which it was paying through sale of oil. Now, the 3 countries, I think 4 countries which are main consumers of oil, one is Japan, India, China, and Turkey. These are the 4 countries which are major consumers of Iran's oil. So they are at the moment finding it difficult because the threats of US sanctions, that any Iran oil that you buy, it not only is the country itself comes under certain scrutiny or sanctions, but any company that is involved. It could be the tanker, it could be the insurance company, it could be the bank through which the transaction is taking place, it could be any of their affiliates. So the sort of net for sanctions spreads far and wide, and therefore most companies do not want to take the risk. So Iran not only is not able to sell its oil, but is also not able to sell other goods or buy other goods because companies which had already reached an agreement with them from Europe are not willing to do any business with Iran because of the fear of sanctions. They will be individually sanctioned, and the European countries have failed to put any instrument in place. They have created a non-dollar based exchange of currency. That currency, agreements or export-imports between 2 countries could be settled directly and not the SWIFT system, which the United States today controls. and it did not, if any dollar denomination takes place, again the United States by its own laws comes into the picture. So they have been trying to do non-dollar denominated exchange transactions, but the transaction system has not worked because there are hardly any transactions taking place. So it seems it is something for show that they have done something, but it has not achieved anything. So this is what Iran is reacting to, that if you claim we should remain in the JCPOA, if you claim you have a stake in it and you also want to be a partner in the JCPOA minus the United States, what are you doing with respect to the sanctions? Are you willing to take our oil? Are you willing to take our other goods? Are you willing to sell our other goods? If we are not, then saying you have a payment mechanism which you have set up, which is not doing anything, is not helping. So they have waited almost now more than 6 to 8 months for the European Union to react to this. And I think they have put the European Union under notice much earlier, that if you don't intervene to settle this issue, then we would have to take steps. So their steps is of course within the JCPOA still, while Trump's actions are not. United States actions are not, but the pressure is now on the European Union. Are you willing to put money where your mouth is? Or are you going to say, being very sanctimonious, that you guys have to observe the deal, but we are really helpless, we can't do anything. So it becomes an unilateral, shall we say, responsibility of Iran not to do anything to upset, quote unquote, the JCPOA limits, while the United States is free to sanction them any way they want. And they can pull out of the deal without any consequences for themselves, while Iran has all the consequences of supposedly violating the deal, which, as we have explained, is not true. But I think that really the issue is it's not only the European Union, but it is also China, Russia, India, Turkey, Japan, which have to decide whether this kind of unilateralism of the United States, in which they actually have international agreements and walk out of it, what is the responsibility of the rest of the world for that? Of course, European Union countries, these 3 countries of the European Union who have been the signatories to JCPOA, have really much more responsibility. But the larger international question remains, how do we address a rogue, shall we say, superpower, which is what the United States is, and wants to impose its rules on others, but it makes up those rules as it goes along.
Yeah. So thank you, Prabir, for joining us today. And that's all the time we have for today. Keep watching NewsClick.